Yeah, sesame snaps. But it's all cane sugar.
I did mine. He said maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, anytime, and that's what they do. Sure. Wednesday doesn't work for me, but Tuesday afternoon. Tuesday afternoon. Tuesday at 5. Dorothy's in there and Sal's. Who knows? It's a nice house. Maybe not.
They went quiet.
That's what happens. It's like magic. 60 seconds before the Just so y'all know, that clock goes first, but then I wait for that clock. So if you're wondering, that's what's going on.
We should make that one start later.
Well, hey, has everybody taken the daylight savings time engagement survey that the province of BC put out?
Yeah.
Yeah. It could be abolished.
Should abolish time altogether.
That's what somebody from Norway is proposing.
That's what they're doing.
Sounds good.
He wants to keep 1 o'clock on the bridge for the winter. We're not for that. If you want to watch, have a watch. He's
Oh, so gosh, look, they both went together. Did you guys do something?
Yeah.
All right, well look, it being 16:30, 4:30. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the District of Tofino Council meeting. I'll call the meeting to order at 4:30 p.m. and recognize that today we're conducting our business in colloquiate territory. I would ask first, please, for a motion to adopt the agenda. So moved. Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed? Motion carried. And we have some meeting minutes from the regular council meeting that was held on June 11th for adoption.
Move adoption.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Were there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Public comment on agenda items. We had one person sign up for a 2-minute speaking slot, and that is Mr. Dennis. Come on up. You can stand behind the podium there and have your 2 minutes. Thanks for being here.
Against the firing squad here.
No, not at all. Go ahead.
I was trying to think about how to talk for 10 minutes, but I'll just jam it into about 30 seconds here. If nobody knows me, I'm Steve Dennis, and my wife and I are the owners of 200 Campbell Street at the end, down the end, adjacent to Duff and Cove. And for several years, we've been working on rezoning it and putting in some units. A little bit more high-end, but that's kind of the way we've been looking. And some questions came up the last, I believe, council meeting about taxations and stuff. And I don't have a lot to say about kind of where we're at, because up until now we've been pretty, I think we've been willing partners in going forward, right? To get where we were before the little problems that cropped up. I mean, you guys all know them. We have pretty well agreed to everything, you know, and not because we had to, because in most cases we actually agreed to it. I have some ideas personally on how to deal with maybe some of the revenue streams and taxation issues. Now is not the time to talk about, but I'm totally open to meeting with staff or Aaron or whoever you guys delegate if we can move this thing forward and talk about them. When I actually owned the Duck and Cove Resort, sometimes we weren't very well received in our ideas because people felt we were picking on it. Well, now I'm on the other side of the coin here, so I have to look at both sides. And, you know, after this last meeting, I also had a little bit more of a look at kind of some of the problems that are cropping up within the community in regards to some of these financial things that are coming down the line, sewer and, you know, infrastructure things. So it makes you, or makes a person a little bit more aware. But I do like to say that I think that we're a pretty willing partner and not against the town in any way, shape, and form. And I really hope that you guys move it through to you know, public hearing and third reading. I think it's a great opportunity. I think we've got some really neat stuff to do here, you know, with the town, and let's do it.
Thank you.
Okay. Appreciate
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Okay, next on our agenda is the mayor's report, and I do have one thing to note. Yesterday, we had an employee pass his 35-year service mark with the District of Tofino. So I wanted to, on behalf of council, offer our thanks to George Hubert for 35 years of service to the District of Tofino. He started June 24th, 1984, and in October 2002, he filled the general foreman position and became the acting public works superintendent more than once for between 2002 and 2007. And in June 2007, he moved into his current position of equipment operator. So we know that George couldn't be here today, but we wanted to say thank you to him. That is a tremendous amount of service. And as the staff said, what would we do without George? That's the comment. So much corporate memory there. Okay, and so now we're going to move into the delegations, and we have two delegations today. The first is from the Pacific Rim Foundation, and our second is from Bob Hansen, the WildSafe Pacific Rim Coordinator. So both of our delegations have 10-minute time slots, and that's your opportunity to speak to us. And Gary, I know you're itching, and so are we. We're really looking forward to this, so take it away. Here we go.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council, for your welcoming our delegation. We appreciate it. You know, we're all showered with so many blessings living in North America, where we sometimes forget how blessed we are. And today, I'm bringing you joyous tidings that will hopefully remind you of how blessed we are. For the 11th year, we meet before our local village's governmental body to mark the significance and share in celebrating our children's accomplishments. We congratulate all of this year's applicants and acknowledge they have each demonstrated a desire to live a life of purpose and make a difference in the world. As we all know, the most important ingredient in a community is the people who live there and how they treat one another. In the words of Wendell Berry, we are all participants in the town's conversation about itself. Wendell Berry. And so it is, or so it was, with Dick Close, who did so much for our community in setting up a scholarship program with the express purpose of assisting a graduating Ucluelet Secondary School student whose personal goals and public contributions were informed by a larger sense of community. Dick stipulated that it would be an expression of support for the local school and that it would encourage families to stay in our communities, knowing this sort of opportunity was available on the West Coast. Dick's leadership in this effort was a reflection of his generosity. Central to the scholarship was the idea that the recipient would be a person who was invested in making the world a better place through a life lived with purpose. Dick believed in lifelong learning, and he believed in young people. This scholarship would celebrate the idea of service to others, and I believe in the 11 years of our operation it has. Dick's gift allows our young people in our communities to dream and imagine greater possibilities and their fulfilled lives. His magnanimous gesture not only encourages the young people of our community to volunteer and be positively engaged, but it also motivates ordinary people, such as myself, to do good things. Once again, we see the unconditional love and support that parents, teachers, and community give to all of our children. These young adults are a reflection of us, and their hard work and earnest efforts are a tribute to the best in all of us. All Tofinons and Euclusians can be proud of these young citizens. The Foundation awards the student who has excelled with their involvement in their respective communities and their engagement in the world. In this, our 11th presentation of the scholarship, we celebrate their volunteerism and contributions to others and their determination to make a difference in a world faced with increasing and great challenges. To paraphrase Ralph Abernathy, we don't know what the future holds, but we know who holds the future. So it gives us immense pleasure today to present this year's recipient of the Pacific Rim Foundation's Dick Close Scholarship to Riley Douglas Banks. Riley, you want to stand up? I'm particularly heartened today to see two of our past recipients attending today's award ceremony, Shanoa and Kenzie Drake. So thank you guys for coming, for sure. I am particularly proud that this year's award goes to a young man who has been inquisitive and engaged from the first moment that he walked into my kindergarten classroom. I don't know why that gets me, Riley, but it does. 13 years later, Riley responded in his application for this scholarship with the words, "My natural curiosity about the world is important to me, and it fuels my thirst for experience. As Walt Whitman advised us, be curious, not judgmental." At the same time, Riley has distinguished himself by a work experience that includes a first job as a s'mores expert at a local resort. A job that Riley described as good as it gets. The path of work has taken Riley all the way from babysitting to dishwashing to dock boy to sales clerk. Riley has also created a program providing tech support to elders in our West Coast communities, collaborating with Ukielit's Assisted Living Center and the District of Tofino. This fulfilled Riley's desire to provide a useful resource to our communities. Those are Riley's words. And as Riley points out, I've been doing that for my own grandparents for many years. So I guess it was kind of a natural transition. Riley's industriousness has resulted in his goal to make an impact on his surroundings. He has volunteered at hospice, Tofino salmon enhancement releases, and lending his empathetic ear to friends and classmates who were struggling with the complexities of life. He'll open up a shop down the street here after this. Riley has long had a passion for physics and the potential that is depicted in science fiction for developing technology to better people's lives. Riley says, "I want to balance my desire to explore my interest in science, but fulfill my ability to help people." Riley has been accepted into the computer engineering program at the University of Victoria. Congratulations, Riley. That's awesome. As Fred Rogers said, look for the helpers. And Riley is that and more. His volunteer efforts are evidence of a dedicated, generous, and kind heart, and his academic pursuits are proof of an open and keen mind. His young life already shows his sense of adventure and willingness to challenge his physical and mental limits. Riley's abilities and accomplishments have shown in his young life his strong character and his sense of purpose. He is a person who is invested in making the world a better place through a life of purpose. These qualities make Riley an ideal candidate fit for the Pacific Rim Foundation support. And I need to acknowledge too Riley's parents and his support network that he's had, because you both have made a big contribution to Riley's life, obviously, but here's the results. So we are here today to recognize Riley's dreams and ambitions and offer him the support and encouragement of his family, his friends, and his community. It's with great pleasure I introduce to you the 2019 Dick Close Scholarship Award recipient, Riley Douglas Banks.
Well, I have some thank yous to say. I think that's the best way to go about this. I couldn't be here without my family, and that's who I want to thank most of all. My dad, my mom, my grandparents, my beautiful stepmom, Serena. I honestly don't think I could be in the position I am today without their help and their support. And along with that, I'd like to thank my teachers, Mr. Marks being one of them, and all my other various classmates and friends. It's been a journey to say the least, but I just can't say how much I'm looking forward to the future. And I plan to move away, but I will return eventually, because this community is home to me. And yes. Just thank you.
So, Council, I still see I have a minute and 13 seconds. So I'm just going to excuse us and pardon us for leaving to sign papers and documents, and thank you very much for receiving us. Appreciate it.
Very, very welcome. Before you go,
Yes.
I would just like to say, first of all, how much it means to us to have you come and make this presentation in front of Mayor and Council as the governors of the community and the people who are helping to lead this place. But we couldn't do it without the people of Tofino, and what you have done today just exemplifies what it is to be community. And so to see Riley, just so fantastic to see this happen, and to see the support you have with previous recipients here, the board of directors from, and now we can say his name out loud, Dick Close, and his incredible generosity, but the work that you've put in to seeing this scholarship program through, and to have this, I mean, your whole family is here, just so lovely. It's really, really incredible, and congratulations, Riley, and thank you so much to everybody who makes this happen, and it's a dream come true for all of us, so good luck. Have at her. Now you can all go. We could do this in every council.
Yeah. Start everything.
Just give it a minute here.
Yeah.
It's a hard act to follow, Bob. I'll say. Geez, how do we do that?
So cool to be here for.
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
Right on. All right. Well, now you get a better view. Welcome, Bob, and thank you for coming and presenting on the WildSafe program. And we'll just usher them out. I think they're going out there anyways. It's all good. If the door is open, Sean, do you want to? Is the no, the other door? No, it's good. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Your Worship and councillors, for the opportunity to provide an overview of the WildSafeBC program for Tofino and the region. I will outline the program approach and the scope of the program, and present a description of services the program provides now and potential further services. Great. And I'll start off with some background and then highlight the extensive community support and talk about the mission of WildSafeBC, the community services, and Better Smart community status. So my background is I've had the great good fortune of being able to focus my work life on the challenges around coexisting with wildlife since 1997. And the ability for this program to exist and for the position that I am in is thanks to all of these supporters, including the District of Tofino, District of Ucluelet, the National Park, BC Conservation Foundation, Jamie's, Ocean Outfitters, Clackwood Biosphere Trust, Wiccan Nation, Black Rock Resort. I can tell you that the head office for BCCF is very impressed with the amount of support that's coming from our communities. All right, so our mission is to pursue the goals of the WildSafeBC program all across BC, and the primary approach is through collaboration, education, and community solutions. In terms of collaboration, on Friday, the provincial coordinator for WildSafeBC was here and participated in a series of meetings, the first one of which was here with Councillor Steer attending. And then we worked down the road to the park and then Ucluelet, and we also met with Ucluelet First Nation. And the provincial coordinator had the opportunity to really develop a clearer picture of the challenges that we're working on in our region and all of the various partners. Basically, there's an awful lot of people that are engaged in efforts around meeting those challenges. So she got to hear from 26 different perspectives and shared knowledge and experience around working to live with wildlife in our region. And it was quite a remarkable day. So you can see all the sectors and for the Tofino meeting that were represented. In terms of education, have a variety of tools, including the WildSafeBC Pacific Rim Facebook page. And I'm looking for assistance in raising awareness and pointing people to this Facebook page. I endeavor to put up posts whenever there's activity in the communities and on hitting various topics that might be relevant. So right now there's a lot of bear activity in Ucluelet. So if there's a number of posts there about the options for reducing conflicts with black bears. Also there was cougar activity down there recently, so there's a post there. Any support in terms of pointing people to that Facebook page would be much appreciated. And other tools that are available through this provincial program, they're extensive. So there's free downloadable brochures on all of the species that are of particular interest for us. There's the Wildlife Alert Reporting Program, which is an online mapping. And if you go on there right now, you'll see all the reports from Ucluelet and then, as of yesterday, Atatsu. So it's a handy tool for residents and it's free, and you can sign up and get alerts. You just put your area of interest into the preferences. I will be attending markets with the booth. Earlier today I spent the day down Ucluelet going door to door in the areas that are experiencing the bear activity and handing out information at vacation rentals and B&Bs and residences. Of course, partnering with the information centers. One thing I hope to do more of this year is backyard audits, where people can just give me a shout and I'll come and have a look, see if they've been experiencing a particular issue, put our heads together and see what we can come up with. There's opportunity to develop customized posters, pamphlets, educational materials. The head office has remarkable capacity in the graphics design department, and they're quite willing to work with us individually as communities. There's bear campsite workshops. So actually in 2 days we'll be heading over to partner with the coordinator in Bamfield for the campgrounds there and training their staff. They have problems every year and they're experiencing problems already this year. But let's just walk them through and again brainstorm on how to apply the bear campsite approach. Electric fencing workshops, particularly for people with chickens and beehives. Bear spray workshops, provision of wildlife and area signs for different species. That link, if you click on it, it'll take you to a video that we did on Thornton Creek and community talks. So lots of education, lots of tools, lots of resources to bring to the community. Also hope to undertake some new initiatives. So one of them is dedicated, targeted education for dog owners. And there's many different facets to this. This is an example that the Capital Regional District has just produced, but I've been working in partnership with their human dimensions specialist, and she's heading up this file, and she's willing to consult with us, and hope to generate and bring in a number of people around this initiative. And also hope that it feeds into the ongoing discussions towards a regional approach for the challenges around dogs. And community solutions. So there's a program about to announce soon which will subsidize conflict prevention supplies for residents. And thanks to the support from the districts, and the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District, we have considerable funds to subsidize these materials like electric fencing kits, bear-resistant composters, residential bins, bear-resistant bins, etc. at half price. And a number of other initiatives such as partnering with UVic Field School on an attractance survey this past winter, and hope to do more of that sort of thing. Also hope to provide, to be a resource for Tofino Conservation in terms of bringing detailed information on wildlife to various undertakings, such as for the new campground development, the Rainforest Inn development, the new community garden. In terms of local knowledge, this is an example from the wildlife hazard assessment that illustrates in yellow what we know are active wildlife corridors. And the red areas are from historical reported conflicts, so it shows hotspots. So that kind of information, bringing that into the mix. And speaking of the hazard assessment and wildlife management plan, I'd really like to encourage council to give serious consideration to adoption of those plans. They are a wealth of information. There's very thoughtful recommendations that reflect best practices. And I'm more than happy to work in any way I can to assist with that process of considering those plans. They provide a real good coexistent roadmap. And pursuing community or Bear Smart community status, we're already well along that road, so I'd really like to help in any way I can to support Tofino in continuing down that road. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's the first time I've ever finished.
Yeah,
on time.
well done. That's amazing.
Well done.
Yeah, very well timed. And thank you for it. And just want to know, thank you again to Ocean Outfitters and Ocean for being here to listen, and for the contribution towards the hazard assessment and the management plan, because it's a really important step. I agree with you. And it rests with our staff now. So we've received it and discussed it, and then asked our staff for feedback on ways, paths forward. So,
Okay.
does anyone have any questions for Bob? Comments?
Just
All right.
appreciate it because it's really vital service, so thank you.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving into the next section of our meeting, correspondence, and we have a few letters. Some of them are fairly similar. The first is from BC Hydro with an invitation for council to meet with them at UBCM if we wished. Did it pique anybody's interest if there's any particular local issue, which I can't think of any, but looking at our staff as well.
We had that discussion with them and then about the storm and the mitigation matters and all that.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so then let's consider the next two together, which are the Municipal Affairs and Housing Minister, Minister Robinson, her invitation to meet with her, as well as the general invitation for meeting with ministers or cabinet members at UBCM. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, if you have particular thoughts. And so for our newest members of council, we go through this exercise every year where we talk about which ministers we'd like an opportunity to sit down and meet with. Our 15-minute speed dating opportunity, which is really like 5 to 7 minutes of speaking, and then the rest of the time is taken up with listening, as well as just the handshake and coming and going and all of that. And after, I don't even know how many years of this now, I think that it's a great opportunity to bring good news to ministers and tell them about some of the successes of Tofino and just kind of keep a relationship going for those that we've met before. There's a couple of ministers that I'd like to suggest we consider meeting with that are new to us, who we don't have a relationship with right now, that I would love to start a relationship with, and it's more around the health and social services side of things and some of the conversations that have been going on in the region around issues to do with alcohol and substance use, as well as the hospital and health services in general. But yeah, I'll stop there and open it up. I'll look at our staff too. So Bob and I already had a little chat earlier about whether we wanted to meet with the Minister of Environment, who's somebody that we've met with fairly regularly in the past as we were lobbying for our need for liquid waste treatment. But because we're well along that path, I'm not sure meeting with him specifically at the meeting at the UBCM would accomplish much. As well as I just learned, as he's coming out here in a couple of weeks, we may have an opportunity to meet with him on the same day or the day after we meet with MLA Fraser. So it's good. Councillor Barr?
Yes, thank you. I don't think we should miss any opportunity to talk at whatever level.
Yeah.
And I know that you've spoken with the Minister of Housing and Infrastructure and all that, Municipal Affairs and Housing, about a number of things, most especially housing, but this elephant that's in our room around the taxation has got to be taken on boldly, and talking about opening up this criteria or finding ways to bring in other pathways of capital funding for the project. So I didn't know if that letter from Selena Robinson was saying there was an opportunity to meet with the Premier. I couldn't quite get that, but I mean, that's a good place to start.
There is always the opportunity to apply for a meeting with the Premier, and we have once before in recent history and got turned down. But I'm totally game for trying again, and not only in relation to this project, but one of the themes that I would really like to take forward to UBCM this year when we meet with cabinet ministers is just around revenue tools for municipalities in general. And so to that end, I already hoped we would be able to meet with the Minister of Finance to talk about certain things. But I think just taking it straight, trying to take it straight to the top is a terrific idea.
Yeah, so in that sense, on my list would have
Yeah.
been the Minister of Finance, as you say, and back to the Ministry of Tourism. The, you know, one, to appreciate the tools that they've given us, and also to ask for more. In terms of preparing them for opening up perhaps some of that MRGT money.
Yeah.
Down the road, whether it's for housing or for operations on the liquid waste. The one thing that I'd really like to see this year, which would be a little bit different than other years, and to the extent that some councillors could maybe work on this, but with maybe some support, is to have some real documentation and something to present.
Absolutely.
You know, because we've often gone in and made verbal presentations and sent things to back up. But, you know, there's so much at stake in this looming kind of expanse that, yeah, the more we can kind of really put our heads together and think about that, and maybe there could be a small working group that I'd be happy to participate in, but, you know, could take that on. But,
Thank you. That's great.
I did, as a conversation that we had this morning with the Minister of Health, I think would be an important one to, at this point, deliver a message about that we're working on towards the delivery of how we see healthcare being delivered in our region, having the ability to have at least a minute at that time. I know that we have had conversations with the Minister, but as today's meeting that we had earlier, I think this might be a good opportunity to continue that messaging.
Yeah, agreed. And also to do this perhaps together with UCLULET.
Yes.
So
that's right.
I have already spoken to the mayor of UCLULET, and they're having the same conversation at their meeting today about what ministers they want to meet with. But if we are able to go together to a couple of ministers around the regional healthcare, and possibly also with some regional district staff support too, because they've been really instrumental in a little bit of this and behind the scenes, to present that regional approach is, I mean, make the most of the 7 minutes that you have, the 7 minutes within the 15 minutes. But agreed. And then to that end also, Judy Darcy, who's the Minister of Mental Health and Addiction. So that's a new relationship that I think is something that's important to make. So one of the things that, and maybe this bears talking to our staff a little bit more, is just figuring out like who's going to make a request if it's something that the regional district and the two municipalities want to work together a little bit on. I don't know who needs to take the lead, but if we have a general conversation today about who we'd like to meet with, but don't make final decisions on everything today, I'm assuming that's okay with everybody and with our staff too, so we could work that out a little bit.
Yeah, it would, I mean, to me, make sense where the regional district is meant to be a federation of municipalities and electoral areas, that the request could come from them, bolstered by us.
Right. Yeah.
In that scenario.
Yeah.
is timing consideration, for example, that we talked about meeting with the Premier,
right?
To at least try to get in the list and
Yeah,
then follow that
sure.
up with.
Yeah, there might be some decisions made today and then some decisions made in a couple of weeks. Or if I have your blessing, I go to the regional district meeting tomorrow. We talk about this again, and I can take action there with the mayor of UCLULET as well. Okay.
I'd be happy with that.
Okay.
I don't know, do you need a motion?
Oh yeah, let's just, we've traditionally met with Minister Bear at the to talk about RMI, but
I think it's worth making the request.
Yeah.
Your Worship, as much as anything, the RMI program has been secured in base budget for the first time in a very long time through that minister's hard work and support of the program. So at least a thank you, and then talking about the future of the program.
Yeah.
I think would be great.
Yeah, great. Any thoughts
About the Minister of Transport?
about?
Well, thank them for finally putting in some pedestrian crossings, and I think, and also the bus pullouts. But I think, I I think the road is falling apart between where they're doing the road works. By the time that's finished, what between here and there is going to have fallen apart. So I think we need to stress that the roads need to be kept up,
And I think
especially with the increase in tourism.
I know that UCLULIT is interested in having a meeting with the Ministry of Transportation, and I'm not too sure what the messaging is there either, but it would be best if they were similar stories. I mean, there's thank yous for what you do in your municipality, but then if we're talking about Highway 4, to be in concert with them.
We did previously request,
tried.
last year, we requested a meeting with the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure to talk about transportation to beyond Tofino. And we were unsuccessful in getting that meeting. There was a lot of back and forth with her staff, but we were unsuccessful in getting the meeting, so that may be something that continues to be of interest, and we can see what comes of our meeting with Minister Fraser also.
Yes.
Before deciding if we want to pursue that with the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure also.
Another issue that I would love to be able to make to her in person, or a point I'd like to make to her in person, is just the importance overall of transportation in the region for healthcare needs. And so the steps we're taking towards increasing public transportation between Tofino and UCLULIT are one thing, but what we know the people who are living in the offshore communities are experiencing is, I mean, this is our opportunity as a municipal government to say this is important to our region, our community, even if it's not our residents who are the ones that are struggling with that travel. But yeah, thank you. I'd love to be able to meet with her. The other two that I wanted to propose to you is one, I have met with Jennifer Rice, who's the parliamentary secretary with the responsibility for emergency preparedness, but we've never met with the minister responsible for that file, which is Mike Farnworth. And I'd love to have the opportunity to try that, again, just to facilitate an introduction and start to talk more about provincial tsunami planning standards, which is something that our emergency program coordinator brings up consistently, that would, as being the focal point of a lot of phone calls from other jurisdictions in coastal British Columbia looking to how Tofino's doing things, and not having the province really take the lead on some of the planning standards that would make things easier for us and maybe keep a couple spare hours in his month. That's something I would like to do. And then the other one, and I can't believe I'm listing all these names, but is whether we have any interest in a meeting with Katrina Chen, who is the Minister of State for Childcare, just to talk about Tofino's story, and as one of only 2 municipalities currently operating in childcare, just to bring a slightly different story and lens to maybe some of the information that she receives, and talk a little bit. By that time, there might be some results from the action planning grant that we could actually discuss. But again, it's really just mostly around meeting her and making an introduction and a relationship.
I think that's great. Childcare did cross my mind earlier, and so I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah. Councillor Chalmers.
Sorry, you guys have hit everyone that I was kind of thinking of. Is there any, have you not been there before, does it get diluted all at the opportunity request for? Do they not kind of
no, I don't think so. I don't know how they run their magic at their end.
I don't know what happens with the sorting hat either.
Yeah.
It seems to happen ministry by ministry, request by request, rather than at least has contact also with them. But it doesn't seem like, well, you've made 5 requests. I've never been asked. You've made 5 requests. What 3 do you want?
Right.
So
although we do have to prioritize, don't we?
Yeah, we
had to prioritize before.
Had to
prioritize.
Right.
But it does seem that it's ministry staff based on how many requests for that minister.
yeah, true.
And there's always the opportunity to meet with senior staff sometimes. Like sometimes the minister isn't available, but there's still value in meeting with the senior staff for sure. And the more meeting requests we have, the more difficult the scheduling can get. But it just is what it is.
Yeah, because something is your number one request doesn't mean necessarily you get it.
Yeah.
Like number 7 request.
Exactly.
And half an hour.
Right. So I think what we are talking about today then would be six requests, and then the other 2 I could take through to the ACRD. So the 6 requests would be the Premier, Minister Robinson, Minister Bear, Minister Farnworth, Minister James, and our Minister of State, Chen. We're going to be busy. Maybe. All right.
Yeah, one of the other ministries that I thought of, but the thing is, it's hard to say what even the question is, but around the jobs, skills, and labor, we still don't have a handle, and it's something CDAC needs to work with to be able to say, this is a challenge. People cannot get employees. We know there's problems around housing them and so forth, but also what's happening with the trades and support and linking trades and jobs, and where are they going with this, and also sometimes the whole foreign worker question as well comes up. So if there were some time within, but CDAC doesn't meet again until September, and there isn't really time to formulate it. We have some information from various kind of, like the roundtable investigation pointing to the problems, but we don't have the kind of statistical or other information to really put together a case. But anyway, it was something that
I don't think we have anything to take to the minister, but that might be something that in particular you and Councillor Anderson as co-chairs of chairs of the CDAC would be interested in sitting down with some of the ministry staff making a staff request just to talk through. I don't know if Cheryl McClay will be at UBCM.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe I'll write to Cheryl first and see.
Okay, that's great.
But I could follow up with Councillor Anderson and Elise on maybe a staff. Is that the way it would work? Or
and staff requests can be done at the convention.
At the convention. Okay, fair enough.
Exactly. We don't have to make a motion for it.
Good.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So here's our list. I think the motion would be to direct staff to make requests on behalf of council to meet with the ministers with the Premier and with the ministers of Transportation, Municipal Affairs and Housing, Tourism, the Public Safety, Finance, and Childcare. Sure, I'll move that. You can second that. And then
just on the discussion end of it, just in terms of with the Minister of Health, that would be through the ACRD, and do we need to be inclusive of that as a...
I will have that discussion with the regional district and the mayor of Equila tomorrow, and then if it seems okay to move ahead there, I will, and if not, I'll bring it back, and we can do it at the next meeting if we need to tackle that in a different way. Okay, Bob's like, oh, okay. I'm going to have to go the full UBCM. It's all right. And so the other thing, especially for new members of council, when we make these applications, we get like 15 words or something to try to convince them of why they should meet with us. So I'd be happy to work with the Lease directly on that if everyone's okay with that. And then prior to UBCM, it's really important that we go well prepared, and so we usually develop the speaking notes, and then what's also great is, although I tend to do a lot of the talking, I don't have to do a lot of the talking, and so if others want to have a shot at this, and we don't generally have a situation where everybody talks in the meeting. We pick one or two people to kind of make the points, but we make sure that everybody goes well prepared. And it's a really interesting experience. Yeah, and it's great. Bob's there to back us up. Yes.
Bail you out of jail.
Yeah, make sure we don't say anything too bad. Okay, great. Any other discussion on the motion then?
Not on the motion, but I have a question about the delegations to UBCM.
Sure, okay. Then I will call the question on the motion. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Councilor
it just occurs to me, and it may not be appropriate, but with certain ministers, there's been a lot of support for Tofino, and I just don't know if there's a kind of Tofino Brandy kind of gesture of appreciation, you know, a kind of Tofino product brand bag of, you know, to say thank you, you know, from so, and I just don't know if that's ever done or if it's the kind of thing.
I don't know. Let's think about that and look into it and discuss it before we go. Great.
I know we did a video at one time that councillors here might not be aware of when, you know, we were trying to speak to the Minister of Transport, and Councillor Thick was very proactive in that. And who knows if that helped make the difference about the walkways or not. I don't have privy to that, but you know, it was something that was tangible and real and kind of set us apart. And so that's why I mention it. It's just, you know, this idea that we go and we're saying thank you as well as asking, you know, has seemed to come up, you know, as something that they appreciate.
Okay. Our next letter is from ABICC, just letting us know that the annual convention is Nanaimo next April 17th to 19th. We're all staying at Brett's parents' house. She offered.
I'm going.
All right, so unless there's any questions about that, we will move into our reports to council. And our first today is the Purchasing and Disposition of Assets Policy Amendment, a report from our Manager of Finance, Director of Finance.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have just a presentation regarding the policy, but I did want to address all these amendments. It's a policy we use daily, and I just wanted Council to be very clear on the amendments that I'm proposing today. So the policy amendments focus on the following areas. There is a definitions and exclusion section added. There's some general policy language changes. Changes to purchase order thresholds, some prohibitions, conflict of interest clause, and then some reporting that we're recommending to come back to council on a semi-annual basis. So I'll just briefly go through the amendments in those areas. For the definitions section, we realized that one thing we didn't consider is the delegation of the authority for staff to purchase when there is an emergency. So we wanted to define in the purchasing policy what emergency means, and we used the definition under the Emergency Program Act of BC. And so in the case of an emergency where we aren't able to carry out a competitive procurement process, this allows us to proceed with purchasing even though we may not have the time to do so. And so that's the reason for the definition and the exclusion section of the policy. For some general policy language changes, we've just indicated, and this was under advisement from a procurement consultant that we did work with to review the policy this year, to indicate in the policy that we do practice procurement in an open, transparent, fair, and accountable way. We certainly have always done that. She just suggested to include that language in the policy, and then ensure that we have leading practices in our procedures documents. We've also indicated in the policy that should trade agreements change, that the policy will change with it. This allows us some flexibility should the thresholds where competitive bidding kicks in. If it reduces, then we will just follow those requirements in the thresholds. We don't have to come back to council and amend that policy right away. It gives us time to do so. Changes to purchase order thresholds. Currently, we require a purchase order between $100,000 and $30,000. The $100 mark was just too low for us, and it was fairly onerous administratively. We just tried that out initially. We didn't have parameters in the previous policy, so we'd like to increase that range between $500,000 and $40,000. And on that higher end, that would be for items that we review quite significantly with respect to fleet insurance and other insurance requirements. So those are two examples of policies that we review thoroughly before we actually engage in the purchase. The prohibition section, this is just recommended from a legal standpoint, is to make sure that there's no dividing of contracts or purchases to avoid the threshold requirements in the trade agreements. We certainly practice that now, but we've just included the language in the policy.
we cannot commit the municipality to contracts without having the appropriate level of authority. We continue to practice that, but we wanted it indicated in the policy. And there's no purchasing of goods, services, construction, or works for personal use or benefit. And again, have always practiced it, but are including it in the policy. This policy will, or the amendment will include a conflict of interest section, and that just indicates that there should be no interest directly or indirectly when contracting for goods, services, or construction by any municipal employee. And then we're recommending some reporting requirements, and this would happen when we quarterly report out to council. So for the quarter 2 and the quarter 3 reports to council, we would at that same time report out on all new contracts, awards, and aggregate contract extensions in the amount any of greater than $75,000. And then if there's any purchases that have been made in variance to this policy, which has not happened during my time and shouldn't happen in the future, we would report out on that on a semi-annual basis as well. So that concludes the amendments, and I'm happy to answer any questions about them.
Thank you very much, Nyla. Any questions? There are none.
Great.
Okay.
I'll move the recommendation, if you want me to read it.
Yes, please.
That the amendments to the District of Tofino Purchasing and Disposition of Assets Policy shown in Appendix 1 to the staff report titled Purchasing and Disposition of Assets Policy Amendment dated June 25th, 2019 be approved.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any final discussion? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. None opposed? Motion carries. All right, our next report is on the delegation of authority amendments from our Manager of Corporate Services.
I also don't have a presentation. I'll just sort of run through the amendments to this bylaw. It's nice to come forward with Nyla. The purchasing policy and delegation of authority bylaw go well together. The delegation of authority bylaw should be reviewed on about an annual to or biannual basis, and so we've lived with it about a year now, and we've realized that there were a few things we didn't include, so we're doing that now. And those would be, with respect to the administration of grants, maybe just to back up a little bit, everything that, without a specific delegation by bylaw, all of the municipal expenditures and agreements that we enter into must happen at the council table. And so the bylaw allows staff to be delegated certain authorities. And so we've currently delegated the authority to execute and submit grant applications, but we didn't include the authority to execute the resulting grant funding contribution or funding and contribution agreements. And so we're just sort of closing the loop there. So that staff have the ability to sign those agreements up to a certain amount, and then any grants that are applied for in excess of $75,000, those would still be executed by the mayor and corporate officer. And then the other amendment that we're proposing here is for allowing supervisors to sign off on purchases of up to $5,000 that are included in the financial plan, and it's just to make the administration of smaller purchases a little bit easier at the staff level.
Thank you.
Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Nope. Thank you.
I'll read this one.
Please.
That the District of Tofino Delegation of Authority Amendment Bylaw number 1237-01, 2019 be read a first, second, and third time.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any final comment or question? All right, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Mr. Rogers has a PowerPoint. What will the quote be today?
No quote today.
What?
Make up a quote.
It's all business.
I think Gary Marks gives many quotes
You
today.
made up for that.
Hopefully better. I have a brief presentation for council in respect of the rezoning application for 200 Campbell Street. Council will remember this was an item we looked at in early April. Again, just to sort of refresh our memories, we're looking to rezone a vacant property that's currently R2 to a comprehensive development zone called DC5. It'll be for 10 units of commercial accommodation and 2 staff. housing and sleeping units is sort of the idea for the project. So on April 9th, I came in front of council with the recommendation that council rescind third reading and go back to second reading to consider some amendments to the bylaw. So there were amendments on use, the massing, and height. At that meeting, council had a discussion about taxation implications and asked staff to come back to council. It wasn't about the taxation implications, but how do we further consider this? That was the actual resolution. And so today I have a very brief overview of some of the implications. And again, a recommendation that we go, if we're going to move forward with this proposal, that we rescind third reading and go back to second reading and have a larger discussion about not just the use and massing changes, but also about taxation and assessment implications. So just a little bit of background on mill rates and assessments. There are, the council, one of the questions that was asked was about the implications of adding residential use to the assessment value. So one of the proposed uses, one of the proposed changes from the applicant was to add multifamily use to the project. And council asked the question, how would that affect value? Turns out, and I think maybe perhaps they're also going to do this, but their municipal zoning regulations have no effect on stratified buildings of under 20 units. So adding a multifamily use as it currently is imagined would make no difference to BC assessment. If it is stratified and if it is less than 20 units, it will be classified as a residential building. A little bit more information, our commercial mill rate is about 3 times higher than a residential rate. I think if we want to go down this road of understanding this further, it's probably time for us to do that at second reading, because there will be new information coming forward to council at that time. So today we can rescind third reading and go back to second. We can do something else. At second reading, we'd be discussing the proposed amendments and the assessment implications, and then we go through the process of public hearing, requirements, and to final reading. Council decided to bring the application that far forward. And that's all I have today.
Thank you
for that.
Okay.
Happy to take any questions.
Okay, great. Questions?
Thank you. If you could remind me again about, I know the height has been increased, but the allowable floor space is almost doubled. Can you remind us of why that is?
So let's just look at it here. So the floor area ratio has not doubled. It looks like it's gone up by 0.06 FAR.
So it's increased maximum floor area ratio from 0.45. Oh, I see. It's a ratio 0.45 to 0.65.
So it's just about 100 meters squared, so about 1,000 square feet.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
Move the recommendation. Third reading of District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw number 1169 2012 be rescinded.
Okay, so moved and seconded then to rescind third reading. And then obviously the corollary is going to happen after this, and we'll consider bringing the amendments forward to deal with it. And I have a few more things to say about that, but I can say it on that, but I certainly support rescinding the third reading. All good to go? All right then, all in favor? Thank you. Motion's carried. Okay, on the matter of then going back and making the revisions, the amendments necessary to come back to second reading and public hearing, my way of thinking, I'm very supportive of that, and I'm kind of ready to move forward with this project and get it moved through and finished one way or another. I've had a lot of time to think about the taxation piece, and I feel like I have a pretty strong understanding of what the taxation implications are. Where I'm really struggling is whether it would be fair to bog down this particular application with this issue that is not ours alone to resolve. That this is an issue we need to take to the province. And we've just had a discussion about meeting with ministers, and this is something I really feel strongly that we need to take back. We've had a lot of discussions around split classification of short-term rentals. This is a policy or regulation that BC Assessment uses to basically exempt stratified lots with 19 or fewer, and I don't think it should hold up this application. So while I'm sure Nyla's also interested in what the implications of it are, and we do have another property in Tofino, Pacific Sands, that has 19 units that are stratified, that are classified residential, they are tax residential. We are misallocating about $35,000 worth of tax revenue in that project alone, and so if this went forward, yes, it would have an impact there. But I think that's a bigger conversation to have that I personally feel we should have separate from the rezoning. So if the proponent wants to add a residential use to this and some persons chose to buy units and they actually end up using it residentially, then great. If this council and this community wants to have a conversation about adding more commercial tourism accommodation units in town, then that's fine too. We can have that conversation, but for myself, I'm just ready to keep going. So I would love to hear what others have to say. Councillor.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. And again, you know, I mean, we've been beating this drum for quite a while, but with the, you know, wherever we've had the opportunity to bring it up, including to the assessment authority. But I guess I have two other concerns. One is about the timing of this project. We are sending it back, but you know, to be fair to the applicant, you know, is this all within a reasonable, I know it's been a complicated project, so back and forth, but it has been in front of us for a long, long time. And we have said in the past, housing is a priority, but on the other hand, it would be good to get this taken to some kind of conclusion. So, you know, I'm hoping that it kind of will stay active and get to that resolution rather than bogging things down. But I don't know in reality what happens with what's on the housing front within the planning department either. So I don't know if staff can enlighten us about that. Well,
as I think most of council knows, and Councillor Baird particularly, you're aware that there's going to be applications from, we're expecting applications from Tofino Housing Corporation very soon. They will be for the delivery of affordable and attainable housing, and they'll be absolutely our priority in terms of processing rezoning applications. There is capacity for other things though, and you know, we'll work to get this done yet. I think staff agree it's been a long time, and we'd like to see a conclusion one way or another.
great, thank you.
Others?
I'm ready to move forward on this.
Yeah.
I think it's unfair to pick on somebody just because we disagree with BC assessment. So let's fight that battle outside and let's move this forward.
All right, so just asking our staff to make sure we're really clear then, if we've considered this resolution but removed that last clause about including options for further information and options regarding the difference in taxation, do you have any comment on that?
That's
Okay.
makes our lives easier.
All right. Okay. Would somebody like to?
I'll move that staff be directed to bring forward amendments to Bylaw 1169/2012 at second reading as proposed in the staff report titled Zoning Amendment Application Dennis 200 Campbell Street dated April 9, 2019, attached as Appendix 1.
Thank you.
I'll
Moved
second.
And seconded. Any final conversation or question? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. All right, on to the next. All right, so our next matter for consideration is a notice of disposition and draft lease agreement with Encorp, the Return It Bottle Depot people. Thank you, Steve.
Very much.
Your worship, councillors, not a lot to say on this, and this is the PowerPoint for the evening, so Very simply, council is aware that the bottle depot in Tofino closed approximately 2 years ago now, I think. And since that time, people with larger amounts of returnables have had to either hire a third party to take them to Euclid or take them there themselves. Through some conversations Mayor Osborne had somewhere or another with Encorp, we learned that they were looking for a location for a pilot project of an unmanned, sorry for being gender specific, facility that would allow larger entities to deal with the returnables in a little more of an efficient fashion. So staff have had discussions with folks from Encorp, and we don't have a lot of land available, but have identified the unnamed road that runs just before the public works yard off of Industrial Way as possibly a good location. The works yard that TELUS was using for a while under a lease from us, we're holding that so it can be available for our wastewater treatment plant contractor should they need it. But believe that putting a container that would serve returnables straddling the fence line that's there is something that would work well for us, and then met us on site and have identified that it would be suitable for their needs also. So what we are looking to do today is advise council that those discussions are underway, and seek council's authorization to continue those discussions, bring forward a lease, and also publish a notice of disposition of land per legislative requirements, so that we can continue this moving along, and it will come back to council in the form of a lease or a license agreement in the future.
Thank you. Any questions?
So this is just going to be a trial of Encorp, or this?
Yeah, my understanding is they're piloting this technology. They're not using it anywhere else in British Columbia right now, and so this would be a one-year agreement to try it out. Okay. Thanks, Bob. Okay.
Move for the staff be authorized to post a notice of disposition for the proposed automated bottle depot on the lands described as a portion of the right-of-way between Warren Way and Industrial Way, and a portion of the property located at 6 to Industrial Way, and that staff be authorized to prepare a lease agreement for council's review and approval between Encorp Pacific and the District of Tofino for the purpose of operating an automated bottle depot for a term of 1 year.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any final question or discussion? Right, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Thank you. All right, next is our 2018 annual municipal report, which Elise is going to present. Oh, I didn't even realize you were going to present. Okay, yay, give us the highlights.
I'd love to. We have this year's annual municipal report. This is the first time some of the newer councillors will have seen one of these, unless you've looked at it as a member of the public. Yeah, happy to do a short presentation just on a few of the highlights out of the report this year, or from last year, that was 2018. First, just why we have this. It's a legislative requirement that before June 30th of each year, a council must prepare an annual report and make it available to the public for inspection. And then we also have a motion on the agenda, or a recommendation to allow the public to make comments or ask questions, and that's a requirement as well. The report has to include a few things, so about half of what you have in front of you is our financial statements, as well as there's one list of the permissive tax exemptions we have to include, and then we have sort of progress reporting and lists of municipal services and operations that we have categorized by department, but also sort of generally following the themes of council's previous strategic plan. Inside the municipal report, you have to have any declarations of disqualified council members and statements of objectives and measures for the current years of 2019. This year's report, as I said, is sort of laid out, sort of pulling the actions and themes from council's strategic plan from 2015 to 2018. And then we've also included many statistics, and so it's just sort of a fun gathering. I think it's fun. All sorts of stats from 2018, from business licenses to EOC activations, development applications, the amount of and different types of recreation programs that were offered, bylaw calls for service, fire calls for service. And then this year we've also included one page that sort of aligns the information from the CBT vital signs with some of the objectives of Council's strategic plan. That's new. I'm just going to run through about 6 slides that correspond to the themes of the previous strategic plan and a few of the highlights under those themes, because it's nice to recognize them every now and then. So under homes and neighborhoods, we've picked out some of the accomplishments of the Tofino Housing Corporation, the first sale of a price-restricted, resident-restricted unit at the Sea Otter Place, partnering with Catalyst Community Developments to confirm the feasibility of developing affordable housing on Sharp Road, and then also work with the TVF to hold some open houses. The District of Tofino endorsed an agreement to transfer MRDT revenue from online accommodation platforms to the Housing Corporation for the purpose of carrying out affordable housing initiatives, and that was a great accomplishment as well. Transportation and infrastructure. I think everyone's familiar that we applied for a 73.33% grant to fund the projected cost of a wastewater treatment plant and associated components. There was a completed water infrastructure review update with projected water supply during periods of low flow, which incorporated climate change impacts as well as future water demands. And that's a 2016 to 2021 report. Road paving and water looping project was completed on Gibson Street. And I think we all remember the windstorm that happened late in 2018. And just a bit of a shout out to the Public Works Department for their hard work during that time. A lot of staff time to remove blocked trees or trees that were down and sort of keep the town going during that time. Community life, I think most of us were present when the Chinook was raised by Carver Joe David. It was in celebration of the colloquiate Havia. Yeah, that was just a great thing that happened in 2018. Also happened in 2018 was the January 23rd tsunami warning, and from that I think we had a lot of lessons learned, and a few great updates happened in 2018 to our emergency program. So the bylaw was rewritten, the emergency program executive committee was revamped, and we created a new committee that's made up of stakeholders in emergency services. And we also began monthly testing of the One Call Now emergency alert system at the same time as our outdoor warnings, and it's really successful. We completed a community hall renovation that included the multi-purpose room, storage for equipment, and updates to the kitchen as well. Under the economic development umbrella, we finalized a 5-year agreement with the Chamber of Commerce for the provision of economic development services. Policy research continued on a few big items in 2018 that may see some more movement in 2019, but definitely a lot happened on the tiny homes, food trucks, and cannabis files in 2018. And then arts, culture, and visitor initiatives. There was the successful renewal of the RMI program and the ongoing implementation and monitoring of the event strategy, as well as the launch of the public art program, and 2 of the first installations of public art in Tofino happened in 2018. So we had the Pete Clarkson's exhibit, as well as the youth-led art aquatic at the community hall. Natural environment, we had a lot of grant funding come through for the Muff extension to the Upcheek-Teshi Trail in the National Park Reserve. There was a new policy adopted for operations and maintenance for Tofino's parks and trails, and then we continued beach monitoring for North Chesterton and Cox Bay beaches. Corporate governance and capacity, I think this is the last slide, but one of the highlights for me was the protocol agreement that was signed between Housing First Nation and District of Tofino. And then we had a few new policies also adopted, the purchasing and disposition of assets policy, which included language about social, environmental, and community benefits in procurement and disposition of municipal assets. And we undertook our first community communications survey. And as you all know, there was a successful municipal election where 65% of eligible voters took time to cast their ballots. That's a few of the highlights from 2018.
Thank you very much. So maybe I'd ask Council to turn your minds to the first recommendation so we could hear from any members of the public that wish to speak. So I'll move that members of the public wishing to ask questions or make submissions regarding the District of Tofino's 2018 annual municipal report be permitted to address Council. Seconded, all in favor? Thank you, motion carried. Are there any members of the public who wish to address council on the 2018 municipal report? Okay, well, thank you very much. All right, and then if we could have a motion to receive it.
The District of Tofino 2018 Annual Municipal Report be received.
Thank you, moved and seconded. Any comments that anyone had, or? Yes,
Yeah,
Councillor
thank you. First of all, in all the years that I've been here, it's the best report that I've seen in terms of the just breadth of content, and it's very readable, and I'm very appreciative of it. I do have a couple of questions about a couple of items but I don't know if now's the time to ask.
I think if they're super quick, in the
Yeah.
sense that they're not going to require a lot of council discussion,
Yeah.
maybe some clarification, that'd be great.
The business license by classification, is that quite new in terms of all of the classifications? Because we haven't had it presented like this before. So.
Yeah, I don't think it's been included in the report before, but it is something that we have as a business licensing tool. We've had this list.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it?
Mhm.
Okay. Any other questions that came from you? I just want to echo what Councillor Bart said, and thank you, Elise, and your staff for, thank you, Jamie. Okay, you guys are doing this. I know this is an incredible amount of work, and thank you. You help us look great, and that's because we have you, so thank you.
And also for the paper copy, I really use it. So.
Good,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor of the motion? Thank you, motion carried. Okay, so we have 4 sets of minutes to receive. The first is the Board of Variance from the meeting held June 13th.
Second.
Thank you, moved and seconded. Any questions that came out of that? No, all right, all in favor? Thank you, motion carried. The second are the Community Economic Development Advisory Committee meeting minutes from the meeting that they held on June 5th for receipt.
Have received.
Second, thank you, moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Thank you, motion is carried. Third would be the Design Review Panel from the meeting held June 10th.
Second.
Thank you, moved and seconded. Any questions that came out of these? All right, all in favor? Thank you, motion carried. And then finally, the Tofino Recreation Commission meeting minutes held the 12th of June. Thank you, moved and seconded. Any questions that came out of that? I signed up for my volunteer slot for Canada Day.
Me too.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, all in favor? Thank you, motion carried. Okay, so moving into bylaws, we have 3 bylaws up for consideration of adoption, and the first one is the District of Tofino Meeting Procedures Amendment Bylaw number 1229.01, 2019.
Move adoption.
Second. Thank you, moved and seconded. Any questions, comment? All in favor? Thank you, motion carried. Next is the Municipal Ticket Information System Amendment Bylaw number 1088.06, 2019 for adoption.
Move adoption.
Second. Thank you, moved and seconded. Any questions from this one? No. All in favor? Thank you, motion carried. And finally, the Bylaw Notice Enforcement and Dispute Adjudication System Amendment Bylaw number 1107.09, 2019 for adoption.
Good adoption.
Second. Thank you, moved and seconded. Any questions? All right, all in favor? Thank you, motion carried. If I just said all in favor, would you just stick your hands up because you feel like Simon says right now? All right, our last matter of business on the open meeting then is the correspondence from WildSafeBC and looking for calls for nominations for 2019 Community Recognition Awards. And Councillor McMaster has suggested that we put forward a nomination for the Village Green Playground Replacement Project.
Yeah, I thought we should put our name forward for this. We've actually won it once before, but
Twice.
I think April submitted the application without any knowledge of council, so I'm saving her the trouble. But I think it's worthy of note, and it's kind of whimsical, and
Agreed.
All sorts of things have won those awards. So
Yeah.
I think it's be good.
Thank you. Great idea. You want to read the motion?
Sure. That staff be authorised to submit a nomination to the WildSafeBC Community Recognition Awards for the Village Green Playground Replacement Project.
Sorry. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any questions? All right. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. All right, that brings us to the end of our meeting and time for any questions from members of the public or our esteemed local reporter. And he's shaking his head. No questions
No, I
for
got
us today,
nothing.
Mr. Bailey?
No.
All right.
I like the 10 a.m. meetings more.
Okay, that's your comment. So noted. Okay, in that case, we'll move that we close the meeting to the public pursuant to sections 91A, C, E, I, and G of the Community Charter to discuss matters relating to personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer or employee, labor relations, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, and litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. Seconded, all in favor? Thank you, motion carries. Take a 2-minute recess? Yep. Thanks, okay, bye John, bye Kennedy, bye.